Hi, good morning or good afternoon to everyone attending today. I am Amy Hajari Case, and you've arrived at our PFF Disease Education webinar series. We'll be talking today about clinical trials. We'll be talking a lot about how to get involved in clinical trials, some of the tools that the PFF has available to help you with that process, and what to expect as a participant in a clinical trial. So this is a great and really important topic, and we've got some great people here to help us with these different topics we'll be discussing today. You want to hit that next slide? All right, so first up, I'm going to introduce, and then we'll get into the meat of our discussions. We have Kelsey Overberg, who is the manager of corporate partnerships at the Pulmonary Fibrosis Foundation. She graduated from Oklahoma City University. She has a bachelor's of science in dance management and a minor in English. Prior to coming to the PFF, she worked 8 years as a lien resolution paralegal for a plaintiff's firm in Chicago who specialized in asbestos litigation. We know asbestos exposure can lead to pulmonary fibrosis. In 2019, she joined the PFF, and she is responsible for cultivating and maintaining relationships with external prospects and partners of the PFF. She oversees our Clinical Trials Education Center. Hopefully you have been there, but if you haven't, you'll get some exposure to that today, including the Clinical Trial Finder and the Drug Development Pipeline. Sponsors and exhibitors of the biennial PFF Summit and day-to-day partnership operation. So we're very glad to have Kelsey here. She will be talking about that Clinical Trials Education Center and the Clinical Trial Finder. And then next up, we'll be hearing from Tim Sheehan, who attended Bloomsburg University of Pennsylvania, where he has a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in exercise science, and also completed a research thesis project. In 2016, he started working as a study coordinator at Penn State Hershey Medical Center College of Medicine, and then briefly moved to the Medical University of South Carolina, but has since returned to Penn State, where he works as research project manager for Becky Bascom at the CCN, or Care Center Network site at Penn State. He also facilitates the pulmonary fibrosis support group meetings at Penn State. So we are very glad to have you, Tim. Thank you for being here. Just a couple of quick housekeeping notes. If you will look to the right of your screen, I think it's on your right, to your GoToWebinar control panel, you'll see options for handouts. There are handouts there. Those are our slides if you want to pull those down and take a look at them later. There is a chat function if you have any technical issues or anything that you need to send us a message about, you can do that there. And then if you do have questions, we will try to field as many of those as we can at the end of our session today. So you can drop those in the question tab to the right on your control panel as well. Please be mindful that we are not dispensing medical advice, and so we cannot answer personal medical questions during the session today, but we will get to as many clinical trial related questions as you may have and as we have time for. So I will now gladly hand the microphone over to Kelsey. Welcome, and thank you for being here.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I am really excited to be here today and share several new and exciting features available to you through our PFF Clinical Trial Finder. I do not have any relevant disclosures. And similar to what Amy just said, please be aware of this medical disclaimer. And I'll jump in and get started. So in September of 2021, the PFF launched a new clinical trial finder powered by CareBox. Today, I will go over the following features: view studies, create an account, match and connect, and request help. The view studies and match and connect features have been available for the past year. However, I will also be introducing 2 brand new features which complement and expand upon this resource. I would first like to mention that the PFF Clinical Trial Finder includes a cultivated list of studies relevant to the PF community, both interventional studies, those where a treatment is being studied, such as a drug, device, or a procedure, and observational studies where participants are assessed and followed, such as patient registries, are included in the Finder. The Finder also includes studies for a variety of conditions, such as idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, connective tissue disease-related ILD, lung transplant complications, and conditions commonly related to ILD, such as chronic cough and pulmonary hypertension. To be included, the study must also have at least one actively recruiting study site within North America. The information displayed within our Finder is sourced directly from clinicaltrials.gov, but it's presented in an easy to understand format. If you're interested in browsing trials near you, searching for trials by keyword, or by filtering by various criteria, you can click View Studies in the upper taskbar. On this page, you will have access to drop-downs, search fields, and other ways that you can narrow your results. While this option is available to you to browse these studies, I'm going to move on now to review in greater detail the features that we've added with the help of CareBox that provide you with personalized assistance in identifying and connecting to clinical research. The first being the ability to create an account. Even if you've used our Finder over the past year, this is a brand new option, and I recommend it as the first step to interacting with this tool. To create an account, first click Login in the upper taskbar in the right-hand corner. From there, click Create Account. On the following page, you'll enter your name, email address, and create a password. We strongly recommend selecting Yes regarding match notifications. This will allow you to receive automated emails when any new trial is added that match your specific questionnaire responses, and also receive relevant research updates from the PFF. When completed, click Create Account. The following screen will inform you of successful account creation. Please also check your inbox for a verification email. You can click Login on this page or in the upper corner on any of the other main site pages in order to enter your login information. Now, anytime you're logged in, your name will appear in the upper right-hand corner. If you click on your name, you will see a drop-down option labeled My Account, which you can use to update your account information and email preferences. Now that your account is set up, it's time to match and connect. You can complete the match questionnaire by clicking Find a Match on the top taskbar or clicking Match in the box on the landing page. Please note that you do not have to create an account in order to use the match feature. However, if you set up an account, it will save your questionnaire answers, and you can come back at any time to review your matches or update your answers as needed. The match feature compares your questionnaire responses with the inclusion/exclusion criteria of the trials listed within our Finder in order to identify studies that you would be best suited for. Please note, as stated here, that having a study identified as a preliminary match doesn't necessarily mean that you can participate in the study. Only an approved study site can make that determination and enroll you. I will now take you through the questionnaire with example responses so that you can see what the match process looks like. The first question asks for your date of birth, month, and year only. You can enter this by clicking on the calendar icon or by entering it directly into the box. For question 2, select your relevant diagnosis. As a general note regarding this and the following questions, if you're unsure of anything, that's totally okay. Just answer the questions to the best of your ability. When in doubt, you can always select Not Sure. In question 3, you're asked to select the range corresponding to your most recent FVC or forced vital capacity percentage. This can be found on your most recent pulmonary function test, also known as a PFT. If you have not had one or do not have access to your results, you can simply select Not Sure. You can always return to update this in the future. Similar to the last question, this one is asking for your diffusing capacity for carbon monoxide percentage, or DLCO. This can also be found on your PFT results if known. For question 5, On question 5, you're going to check the box next to any medication that you're currently taking, and then click Continue. On question 6, you'll be asked about any other relevant health conditions. You can select any and all that apply or none as applicable to you. Question 7 is regarding past participation in clinical research. This answer will not impact your results and is for PFF information only in order for us to understand better the individuals who are utilizing this resource. After answering, click Save Can Continue to proceed. Lastly, please enter your zip code. This should be of your residence or the residence of the patient you are searching on behalf of. This will sort your results in order to show you the studies closest to you first. Click Continue in order to see your results. On the results page, you'll see a list of all the studies within the PFF Clinical Trial Finder which match to your responses. You can see that based on this example questionnaire I completed, there are 63 study matches. If you want to change your answers or update things at any point, you can click Edit Questionnaire. If you create an account, you can come back at any time to do this. Depending on your responses to the questionnaire, you may still have a large number of studies in order to review. And the first step to narrow your results is to modify your maximum desired travel distance. You can do this by clicking on the little green arrow next to your specific location and then adjust the slider bar to your desired distance. So in this example, I moved it down to 50 miles, and you can see that that will reduce the number of clinical studies now on my list to 11. You can still further narrow your focus by using any of these drop downs that you can see here if there's certain things that you're interested in. As you scroll down on your results page, you will see your preliminary matches sorted by those with a study site closest to your provided location, along with basic information about that study. To learn more, you'll click on the title of the study that you're interested in. Once you've clicked into a study, you'll see the study information in greater detail. Just as a note, you can also always access the original listing on clinicaltrials.gov by clicking the NCT ID number that's listed directly below the title on each page. Most importantly, as you scroll down, once you're within a study page, you will see the study location section. Here you will see a map with locations of study sites with the one closest to your location at the top. Within the box, you will find the trial contact name, phone number, and email address, which you can use to reach out to get more information about screening and possible enrollment. And if you've made it this far, you're probably well on your way to participating in research by utilizing these self-service tools. However, if at any point along the way you came across a stumbling block, whether it be difficulty in creating your account, filling out your questionnaire, or getting in touch with the trial contact, we have yet another new feature to share with you. You can now request help directly from a CareBox Clinical Trial Navigator. These individuals are specially trained in the use of this platform and are here to help you get connected to research. To request help, you have two primary options. First, you can call 1-866-914-7346 to speak directly with a navigator. We have both English and Spanish speakers available. The navigators are available to you Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Second, you can click on the Contact Us box in the upper taskbar, or the Request a Consultation button, which is located on most pages throughout the Finder. If you request a consultation, you'll be asked to fill out a brief form with your contact information and preferred contact method and timing. After you click I accept, a CareBox navigator will contact you as to how you were requested to be contacted, whether that's by email or by phone, during the time period you requested, so long as it's within their designated working hours. The PFF is pleased to share this new service with our community as it is in line with our mission to accelerate the development of new treatments and ultimately a cure for pulmonary fibrosis. In conclusion, I would review some key points and takeaways regarding our PFF clinical trial finder and these new updates. 1, you can create an account to save your information and receive automatic updates on new trials that may be of interest to you. 2, you can complete your match questionnaire to get personalized recommendations on trials near you. Review your match list and narrow your results by travel distance and any other important factors. You can right-click on the page to print your list to take with you and speak with your doctor, or show them your results on your mobile device at your next visit. You can also use the contact information on each individual study page to reach out directly to the closest site about possible enrollment. And finally, last but not least, request help. If you need it at any step along the way, CareBox navigators are standing by to provide you with one-on-one assistance at no cost to you. You can visit trials.pulmonaryfibrosis.org today to get started. At this point, I am going to pass the mic to Tim Sheehan to speak with you more about the clinical trials process.
Thank you, Kelsey. Hello, everyone. It's nice to see everyone here today. I would like to first thank the Pulmonary Fibrosis Foundation for giving me the opportunity to speak to everyone today. And I want to specifically thank Laura Devitt, Kelsey Overberg, Amy Case, and Jessica Shore for their work that they do at the foundation and for also inviting me to speak today. Next slide. So Amy did a wonderful job of introducing me earlier. Thank you for that. But a little bit of background about myself. I do have a master's degree in exercise physiology. I worked here at Penn State from 2016 to 2018 with Dr. Rebecca Bascom, who a lot of you may know. I moved to Charleston, South Carolina, where I worked with Parkinson's patients for a little bit. And I was lucky enough to come back to Penn State and continue my work with Dr. Bascom. Today, I have no relevant disclosures. We do want to bring up this medical disclaimer again, if everyone wants to take a minute to read that. So, as you all know, we are here today to talk about clinical trials, specifically how to get involved and what to expect when deciding which, how, when, and where, and why to join a clinical trial. Some of the specific topics we will be discussing today include, the definition of what a clinical trial is. For example, I always say all clinical trials are research studies, but not all research studies are clinical trials. We'll also be talking about why it is important to both conduct and participate in a clinical trial, the benefits of participating, and we'll also be talking about how to choose if, one, you should participate in a clinical trial, and if yes, what things should be considered when choosing if a trial is right for you. And finally, once you do decide to participate in a specific study, what is the process of getting started, how to get enrolled, and what's expected after that? So first and foremost, what is a clinical trial? The FDA and the NIH, they have specific definitions of what makes a research study a clinical trial. For a research study to be defined as a clinical trial, it must meet certain criteria. First, it must include human subjects. Some studies, such as animal studies or laboratory research, they would not be considered clinical trials. So the study must include human subjects. Those participants must be assigned to one or more interventions. For example, a lot of clinical trials that you have heard of or may also have already participated in involve the use of an experimental drug that has not been approved or on the market yet. But interventions for a clinical trial can also include things such as an exercise program, some sort of device, or even something like counseling or a questionnaire study or things like that. These studies may, and they often do, especially the drug trials, they include a placebo, which is basically an inactive form of a drug. It looks and feels like the real thing, but there's no active medication in it. And the reason for a placebo to be used is in order to compare participants who use the drug and those who do not. The last criteria for a study to be defined as a clinical trial is that the study must evaluate the effects of this intervention on health-related outcomes, such as breathing tests, vital signs that blood pressure and heart rate, lab results, answers to questionnaires that are collected, CT scans, etc. So the intervention must evaluate the outcomes or the effects on those outcomes. There are also different phases of clinical trials. The trials our team that we offer here at Hershey are often phase 2 and phase 3 studies, but phase 4 studies are often something that patients participate in. Phase 1 studies often involve individuals who are not diagnosed with a disease, but they're being studied mainly just to make sure that the drug is safe within the human body. So there are different phases of a clinical trial as well. There are different stages of a clinical trial. So we're still on the definition of a clinical trial. So the stages of a clinical trial include the screening stage, the treatment stage, and the follow-up stage. The screening stage or screening window usually consists of 1 or 2 visits to the study center over a time period of a few weeks or a few months. We'll talk about this more later, but during this time, assessments are done in order to determine if a person meets the eligibility criteria in order to participate. Once a person is eligible and enrolls, they enter the treatment period where they receive the intervention. They come in for visits to the study center. And that also involves the time period where we collect information in order to compare it to baseline results. And then once the participant completes the treatment stage, the intervention is no longer administered and they enter a follow-up phase. This generally involves 1 or 2 study visits, and the purpose is for long-term safety evaluation after the intervention is stopped. So now that we know what a clinical trial is, why are they important? Why should you care? Why are these research studies important? Why should you participate? Well, just like all research studies, clinical trials benefit both society and the scientific community. They not only allow participants to receive an intervention that is not otherwise available, but they also help the scientific community find better ways to treat the disease and to learn other information not previously known about diseases. The benefits of participating in a clinical trial to you directly, if you choose to participate, first and foremost, those who participate in research studies are oftentimes more closely followed than those who do not. I often say to my participants, there is no individual followed more closely than someone participating in a clinical trial. And because this is a result of more frequent visits to the study site, more closely follow up, and also more assessments are being performed during the research studies that would not normally be performed as part of your standard of care. Sometimes the intervention you are receiving will benefit you directly. This is not always the case, especially if someone is receiving a placebo, but the intervention could benefit you directly. And then again, information gathered from the assessments and the data collection will benefit others with ILD or pulmonary fibrosis in the future, and will also increase the amount of knowledge that we have about the disease. And as a nice perk, compensation is often provided to those who participate. So once you have decided that you want to participate in a clinical trial, you need to decide which one is right for you. There are several things to take into consideration when deciding which study to participate in. Those include the eligibility criteria, often referred to as the inclusion and exclusion criteria, which we will talk about later on. There are side effects to the intervention that you must know about, if there are any, how it will affect other medications you are taking, or vice versa, such as how the medications you're taking might affect the study drug or intervention. And then also location of the study site is extremely important, especially with gas prices these days, and depending on how often the study visits take place. Sometimes you might have to come in every week or every month. So that's an important thing to take into consideration as well. There are, so when considering if you should participate in a certain study or not, there are some things to look out for. Unfortunately, there are times when someone or some entity will advertise or conduct research that is not regulated, or it may even be a scam. So you have to keep a lookout for things like that. And there are certain red flags that you want to keep an eye out for. Like I said earlier, oftentimes participants are compensated for participation. So when no compensation is provided, or even worse, when you are asked to pay out of pocket to participate in a study, this is a big red flag. Regulated or real clinical trials will never ask you to pay them in order to participate. Oftentimes, these trials or these scams will offer a miracle drug, or simply put, something that's too good to be true. And if it is, if you think it's something that's too good to be true, it usually is. And then I think Kelsey mentioned clinicaltrials.gov earlier. A big red flag is if a study is not found on the website clinicaltrials.gov. This site includes every and all regulated clinical trials currently going on everywhere. It's a requirement that all clinical trials be registered to this site. So if you come across a research study that's not included on clinicaltrials.gov, that's often a big no-no. So this slide outlines the process that will take place once you have decided which clinical trial you may be interested in participating. We'll be focusing on the highlighted bullet points in this presentation. The process starts with initial contact with the study team, and that may be whether they reach out to you, maybe your provider or your physician says, hey, this person might qualify for a study, so the study team will reach out to you to see if you're interested. Or if you find a study that you may be interested in participating, then you can contact the research team as well to learn more and to figure out what are the next steps. And those next steps include the pre-screening, the screening visit, and the enrollment period that we'll be focusing on today. So the pre-screening period, after initial contact is made, a study team will often perform this pre-screening or pre-review of your records to make sure you meet the basic eligibility criteria. This is often done by discussion over the phone, or the study team will review your available medical records with your permission. Also during this time, the study team will often provide the participant with what's called the informed consent form. They will also schedule a time for you to come in for your first in-person screening visit. I've been talking about this eligibility criteria throughout the presentation. The reason each study has eligibility criteria, or often called inclusion-exclusion criteria, and the purpose of that is for participant safety and also study integrity. We want to make sure that the people who are participating in the clinical trial, it's safe for them to do so, and also that the study is actually looking at a population in which the intervention will be applied once it's approved. In order for a person to participate in the clinical trial, they must meet all the inclusion criteria and none of the exclusion criteria. Common inclusion-exclusion criteria for individuals with pulmonary fibrosis include their actual diagnosis. As we know, pulmonary fibrosis encompasses a lot of different diagnoses. A lot of times it includes the time since diagnosis. Sometimes you'll have to be diagnosed within 5 years in order to participate. Your breathing test results, your radiology or CT scan results, blood results, lab results, and your past medical history. Oftentimes, if you have other conditions, such as heart conditions or GI conditions, that may exclude somebody sometimes. So once you are scheduled for your screening visit, we bring you in, and we like to call it a screening window. It's a time period where we collect all this information needed to determine if someone is eligible to participate in a clinical trial. This generally lasts 4 to 6 weeks for most studies, but it can last anywhere from 2 to 12 weeks. Also, the data that is collected at this visit could serve as the baseline data to which all other assessments are compared throughout the time of the study. And it's usually the most time-consuming portion of the study because we collect everything we need. During the screening visit, you must sign the informed consent form, and that usually happens at the very beginning of the screening visit. The informed consent form is a document that will be reviewed by you, possibly a caregiver, and the study team. The purpose of the consent form is to make sure that the potential participant knows exactly what he or she is signing up for. The information provided in the consent form includes anything and everything that can be expected when participating in a research study, such as the purpose of the study or why the study is being conducted, procedures and assessments that will be done as part of the research, as well as when those procedures and assessments will occur. Also, the risks and benefits to you if you choose to participate. And then the reviewing of this consent form with the study team also provides an opportunity for you and your caregiver to ask questions about the study and what you can expect, what we expect out of you. And it gives you a very good opportunity to get everything, out in the open. What can we expect? Ask questions, and we encourage participants to ask questions during this process. So once it is determined during the screening period that all the eligibility has been met and you qualify for the study, you sign the consent form and you decide you want to participate, that is when enrollment occurs. So you come in for the next, we call this visit 1 after the screening visit. You come in and that's when you start receiving the treatment. You come in for regular visits based on the study design. Every so often, each study is different. And an important thing to talk about is that you can withdraw at any time. Research is voluntary, so once you sign up, you are not locked in. You can leave or withdraw from a study at any time for any reason without any repercussions. Some things to consider once you have signed up for a study and enrollment begins and you start coming in for study visits, the location of the study site. Where do you have to go for your assessments, for the study visits? Something like traffic to take into account. You want to make sure you give yourself enough time to get there. Caregiver burden. Sometimes the caregiver has to come with you to the visits or take you there. Sometimes studies involve caregiver participation, such as answering questionnaires, or they might have to complete some assessments themselves. When you do come in for a visit, you want to make sure you come prepared. For example, some of the blood draws will include fasting. You want to make sure you're not eating anything according to the protocol if you're not allowed to. Sometimes you want to bring a list of your medications and procedures. You want to bring something to eat or drink with you because a lot of these visits do take a few hours and take up a good chunk of the day. Also, you want to make sure your insurance is not affected by participation. And again, we encourage you to always ask questions and know your rights and other options when you participate in a clinical trial. Some resources available to you in order to find what's out there, what clinical trials are going on right now, what's available. As Kelsey presented, the Pulmonary Fibrosis Foundation has that study finder. Again, there's clinicaltrials.gov. It's a website, and that's the actual URL or the website you can type into your computer, clinicaltrials.gov, where you can find any and all clinical trials going on right now. There's also local study finders. I know Penn State, here at Penn State, we have one that patients can use to look up any studies that are going on here locally. And then also just talk to your healthcare providers. They are often very well educated on what research is going on in the area, and they'll be able to help you find what's right for you if you're interested. I also wanted to point out that there are other types of research studies. So if someone is not so sure that they want to receive like a experimental drug or an intervention that's not been approved yet, there are other ways that you can participate in research. There are observational studies where there's no actual intervention, but you can still, the study team will observe a certain endpoint or outcome over time. There are registries, where the Pulmonary Fibrosis Foundation has a registry. Some of you might be participating in that, and that's just a database of information that is collected. And there's something called investigator-initiated studies that are not sponsored by pharmaceutical companies. So they're not necessarily, they go on locally at your site. So again, talk to your healthcare providers about what research is out there for you. So if anyone ever has any questions or wants to contact me directly about, if you have any questions about research, I love to talk. As they mentioned earlier, I'm the facilitator of our pulmonary fibrosis support group. So I love talking to patients. It's one of my great pleasures of my job. So if you ever need to reach out to me, my email address and phone number are listed there, and I can provide that after the presentation if necessary. But that is my email and phone number. Please feel free to reach out. I believe we have questions and answers at the end, but if I want to answer any questions, I guess we'll get to that part. And then I just wanted to thank everyone for giving the opportunity to talk to you today. And then the PFF Community Registry enrollment.
Great. Tim, thank you so much. Kelsey, thank you. There was great discussion on clinical trials. I think we've gotten a great overview of the process, some ways that we can get informed and involved. So I would love to get some questions from our audience here. I've got some to start with, but if there are others, you can go to your control panel, drop that question tab down, and enter your questions first. We'll get to as many of them as we can. First, I'm going to ask a question to Tim. You've been doing this for a minute. How many clinical trials do you think you've worked on?
Oh my goodness. Well, right now we have about 4 that are currently going on and that are going to be ending soon. And we have 5 right now that are going to be starting up. So at any period, we have about 4 or 5 going on. And I've been working on this for about 7 years, maybe. So maybe about 30 different clinical trials specifically. And then also, like I said, we have those registries and investigator-initiated studies going on as well.
That's really fantastic. Your experience is so valuable here, and being able to share that with our community, I think is super helpful to hear that from your perspective and things that you feel like they need to know as well that they might not necessarily know to ask about. So a question about, you mentioned some of the red flags for clinical trials. I have a couple of questions around that. One is, asking for, many clinical trials provide a little stipend for time or distance or something along gas money and things like that. But there are some clinical trials where, just coming at it from an investigator side, there are standard of care procedures for which, these are things that would already have been done with a patient. And so maybe they wouldn't get, they wouldn't be asked to pay for that out of pocket, but it might bill to their insurance, for example, and something that is only related to the study would then be covered entirely by the study. Talk about that a little bit, and because I think that can potentially be confusing if people are seeing, maybe a copay or something along those lines when it might be something that is usual standard of care.
That's a very good point and a good question. So yes, anything directly involved, anything that we collect or any procedures that are done that are directly involved to the study is paid for by the sponsor, or we call them a sponsor, or the study budget and everything. So if say you have to get a CT scan, for example, as part of the research study, that does not get billed to your insurance. In fact, oftentimes insurance will not even know you got the CT scan. And other times, if a CT scan is done as part of a standard of care, if your physician or your provider wants you to get one, we're able to use that for the study. Now, in that case, since it was part of your normal care, your normal workup or follow up with your clinical provider, yes, that would be billed out of pocket and used for the study. But again, any procedures, breathing tests, CT scans, lab tests are not billed to insurance. It should not, overall, it should not cost a participant anything to be in a clinical trial.
That's great. Yeah, I think the thing I like to think is like, would you be getting this done were you not in a clinical trial? And if the answer to that is yes, then it's probably that thing will be billed to insurance. And then if no, then that is something that would be paid for and covered by this study. The
Correct.
other question we had along those red flag lines was, how can a person be confident that their study that they're interested in is on clinicaltrials.gov? I'll tell you, I've been on it many times and it's still confusing to me if I'm trying to look something up to know, is that exactly the one that I'm looking for? Is that the right study number and things like that? How can people be sure about that? Tim, I'll ask you, and then Kelsey, maybe you want to weigh in on that as well.
Right. I always suggest just talking to your healthcare provider, talk to your pulmonologist. Your pulmonologist will know, or if a study is legitimate or not legitimate. If you're really concerned, if a person is really concerned about whether or not this is the real deal or this is something they should be concerned about, I always direct people to their providers or their physicians.
Great. Kelsey?
Yeah, absolutely. I second that for sure. I would just reiterate what I mentioned in my presentation is that all the studies that you'll find in the PFF Clinical Trial Finder, which is can be accessed at trials.pulmonaryfibrosis.org. All of those trials are coming from clinicaltrials.gov. So if you're on our finder and see something that you're interested in, you can at least rest assured that it is on clinicaltrials.gov. It is going through the proper channels. And that's something that can hopefully help people feel more assured as they're looking through that list.
Great, thank you. I just dropped the Trial Finder URL in the chat box. Kelsey, will you double check and make sure that came up correctly? It's trials.fibrosis.org. It added an HTTP on the front of it, so I'm hoping that's correct. I didn't do that part.
Yes, you should be able to copy and paste that into your browser and it'll take you right there.
Yeah, or you can actually just click that link, or you can copy it and put it in and find it later if you want to stick with us for a few more minutes. So another question here, why is it that we tend to see, and Tim, I'll give you the floor on this one first, that studies are oftentimes centered in larger cities, maybe in higher populated areas, maybe at academic centers. Sometimes they're hard to get to, and you mentioned like the cost of gas and things like that, but not all of our community lives within even driving distance of a large academic center or something like that. So explain perhaps why that happens, if you could.
Basically, it comes down to resources and availability. Often the academic, a lot of things go into conducting a clinical trial, such as you need a facility that has the right equipment for breathing tests, CT scans, things like that. They need research teams and staff and faculty that can run these studies. So it comes down to resources available and also population availability as well. A lot of these high density, population dense areas have participants available, readily available, to recruit and participate. I will say though, for those who live in more rural areas and need to travel a long distance, oftentimes clinical trials, or at least the pharmaceutical sponsored clinical trials, they will pay for not only travel, but a lot of times they'll pay for hotel stays if you need to, if you're traveling long distance and you're spending hours at a research center for a study visit. They will pay for hotels and things like that as well. But where there's a will, there's a way. So we Hershey's more of a little bit of a rural area. We do have this big academic medical center in the middle of it, but we do always find a way for people to be able to get here and participate if they want to.
That's great. Okay, so question, I'm going to switch gears. Question for Kelsey about the clinical trial finder. So gone in and I've got my match list and there is a lot of stuff on it. I'm like super overwhelmed. I have 67 results. And how do I decide what to do? What do I do with this information?
Yeah, definitely depending on your answers to the questionnaire, you might have like in the example I did, there were 60 plus studies available, which is great, but also can be a bit overwhelming. And so I would recommend a few things. That first step, like I mentioned, you probably have a maximum distance you want to travel. So you can, adjust that location travel radius so that you're only traveling up to 50 miles, for example, to get to the study site. And that might give you a much more manageable list. But even then, you might still have several to choose from and not know exactly where to start. I think there are two major things that you can do, two easy things that you can do. One, as Tim mentioned, it's always great to talk to your doctor. So you can print off that list, whether you have a printer at home or you just want to have that website up on your phone the next time you go to the doctor. If you've created that account, you should be able to easily pull that list back up, and you could go through it together with your doctor and discuss the pros and cons, or what study they think might be best suited for you based on the more granular information that they have about your situation. You can also call our new service with CareBox. The CareBox trial navigators are really great at talking you through what the different trials might be like, getting into that more detailed information, and can also help you get in touch with the study site coordinators as well. And you can call them at the number I mentioned earlier. It's 1-866-914-7346. And they are available 9 to 5 Eastern time, Monday through Friday, and they can also kind of help you narrow that list down.
Great advice. I'll also add that oftentimes, at a center, there may be more than one study that actually would fit your profile there. And it might be that a consultation at that location could help you, or you're speaking to the investigator or the trial coordinators there might be helpful in identifying factors that might make you be more interested in one than another. There are some factors that may not be readily available on the clinical trials information, such as visit frequency, some of the procedures and things like that. So that might tip you one way or another. That might still be available at the same locations. They can maybe help you direct one over the other as well. Tim, I have one for you. If you are in a placebo-controlled clinical trial, do you ever find out, like at the end, they like tell you, did you get a placebo or did you get the active therapy?
They do, for at least the pharmaceutical sponsored clinical trials. When you're receiving an experimental drug not approved, they will disclose that information at the very end of the study. Once all of the study procedures are done and the data has been analyzed and everything, all the bows are tied, the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, they do disclose that information to participants. They often give that information to the study team, and then we relay that information to the participants after the fact. You will not know during the study.
Yeah, that's really important that everybody stays blinded during the study and all through the analysis until after. So it may be even, you know, so late that you know, that some people don't end up finding out, you know, what was
it
there.
Happens quite a time afterwards, months, maybe a year afterwards. I will like to say though, if I could, that if there is a medical emergency during the study, if something happens, a side effect, or if something happens, we are able to what's called unblind a participant, where we can, if someone ends up that they need to know if they're taking a certain medication or not, we can unblind a participant during the study. Now that will cause the person to have to stop the trial, but we are able to do that in the case of a medical emergency.
That's a really good point. Okay, so another question, Tim. Do participants in a clinical trial automatically, after the study is, you know, after their study period is ended, does everybody get to go on the study drug after that?
Oftentimes what happens is there's what's called an open label extension. Either they call it an open label extension period, or sometimes it's a whole different study where participants, whether they were receiving the active drug or the placebo, if they complete the first, you know, if they complete the original study, they can roll over, is what we call it. They roll over into this open label extension where everyone knows they're getting the active study drug. And that's the purpose of that is for more follow-up long-term information for those conducting the study, and to make the medication or the drug available to participants until it becomes approved and available on the market.
Yeah, that's great.
That does include, though, coming in for study visits and continuing to do different assessments and things like that. It's often less intensive than the actual placebo portion of the study, but it does involve coming in every once in a while for follow-up visits.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's more frequently part of the protocol. It really has to be sort of predefined as part of that. So if you're going into a clinical trial, that is something that's usually knowable at the screening visit, if that will be an option there at the end of the study. So you can know yes or no, would that be an option for me? It's much more frequent in later phase clinical trials than it is early in those earlier phase clinical trials.
That's a good point. Yes, that is correct.
Okay, so I am gonna shift gears. If there are questions that we have not been able to get to, we will try to follow up with you on those. But I did want to just give everybody an opportunity, a really exciting opportunity here, and make an announcement. If you haven't already heard, which you may have, that the Pulmonary Fibrosis Foundation has launched the PFF Community Registry. It launched last month on July 18th. The Community Registry is collecting participant-reported data that's provided directly by patients who are living with pulmonary fibrosis and interstitial lung disease, by their caregivers and their family members, as well as lung transplant recipients who were previously diagnosed with pulmonary fibrosis or interstitial lung disease. So I would venture a guess that the vast majority of people listening now are eligible to participate in the PFF Community Registry themselves, not just to help another person participate, but to participate themselves and share their information and data and help us to understand our community and our community's needs, and understand more about this disease. For those who are affected by pulmonary fibrosis or interstitial lung disease, the PFF's Community Registry is the easiest way to help accelerate PF research. And it is agnostic to where you live. As long as you are in the United States, you can participate from anywhere in the country. So those people who are more distant from clinical trial sites are able to participate. Everything is online surveys, and you are really just giving us your insights and your information. By completing these online surveys, your information will make a big difference for today's patients, caregivers, family members, and for future generations for what we hope to learn from all of this information. And so if you have not already done so, you can enroll today at pffregistry.org, and I'm going to make it super easy for you. If you want to drop down to that chat box, you can just hit the link there. You can go now, you can register, and there's a process you go through. It should be very straightforward. You can call our help center if you have questions with the process. But please help us and participate, spread the word to family members, caregivers. And this also gives you an opportunity to get updates on what we're learning from the registry here as we enroll patients and caregivers, family members, and transplant recipients. So that is all I have for you guys today. I want to thank Kelsey and Tim again. This has been a really wonderful session. So much information, resources here for our community available. Please let us know. Contact us if you have any additional questions. And we will see you at next month's session, which will be for ILD Day. September is Pulmonary Fibrosis Awareness Month, so just get ready with a lot of exciting things happening in terms of awareness and ILD Day for education. Thank you again, and have a wonderful rest of your day.